Welcome back guys. Today we are celebrating 70 years of Ferrari. This was filmed at the London Classic Car Show at the end of February. So let's start from the very beginning. Enzo Ferrari was around 50 years old when he decided to start building his own cars. So when most people at the age of 50 are considering retirement, Enzo Ferrari decided to take a huge risk in building his own cars. Before this, Enzo was running the Alfa Romeo Grand Prix team under the banner of Scuderia Ferrari Alfa Romeo. When Alfa decided to start their own Grand Prix team, Enzo Ferrari was not very happy about this. He was offered a directorship within the team, but he decided to part ways with Alfa. As part of the severance between Alfa Romeo and Enzo Ferrari, he was not able to build any cars under his own name, so he decided to start up another company called Auto Avio Costruzione, AAC. AAC produced aircraft parts as well as one car which took part in Emilia Emilia. The car itself did not finish the race, but it was very quick and impressed a lot of people on its debut. In 1947, Enzo Ferrari was finally allowed to produce cars under his own name and he founded his company. And now we're going to look at some of those legendary cars, the first one being the newest hypercar that Ferrari has made, the LaFerrari. What Ferrari have done is that they've taken everything they've learned in Formula 1 and applied it to this car. It is the most powerful road-going Ferrari ever made. It has their famous V12 engine, but they've married it with a KER system, which is the kinetic energy recovery system. When the KER system, or the high KER system as Ferrari calls it, was combined with the V12, it became the most powerful V12 ever to be used in a road car. And unlike its rivals, the McLaren P1 and the Porsche 918, Ferrari did not turbocharge its hypercar. In fact, Ferrari have clearly stated that they will never turbocharge their V12 engines, unlike their V8s, which are turbocharged. When it came to designing the car, for the first time since 1973, Ferrari did not use Pininfarina. In fact, the design work for this car was done all in-house. Pininfarina were asked to submit designs for this car, but Ferrari decided not to use them and go all in-house. Interestingly, Ferrari have moved away from Pininfarina designs recently, which is a bit strange considering they have such a great history together. Anyway, let's take a closer look at this car. This car has a black interior with red stitching. I think the red stitching really brings out the lines, and it's actually one of my favorite types of interiors, black with red. Even the headrest has a red Ferrari logo on it, which looks really cool. Part of Ferrari's design philosophy is that it doesn't believe in using wings on its cars. This is something Luca de Montezemolo insisted upon when he took full control of Ferrari in the early 90s. He believed that Ferrari should be beautiful, elegant and timeless, and that wings do not make a car beautiful and elegant. But to help with the aerodynamics and the reduction of drag, Ferrari has sculptured this car using his F1 knowledge, and we can see the difference between this car and the previous generation car, the Enzo, which we're going to look at now. The Enzo, named after the founder of Ferrari, was developed by Michael Schumacher, the 5-time Ferrari world champion. Black version is probably one of the best ones I've seen. I prefer my Ferraris in black and sometimes in yellow. I think black is probably the best color for Ferraris. And here you can see, when compared to the latest generation LaFerrari, the car is less sculptured. Let's take a close look at the heart of any Ferrari, its engine. One of the things that I like about Ferrari engine blocks is that they paint them red. This is something historical. I think they've been doing it since the 60s, maybe even before then. And there you have the red block with the carbon fiber airbox on top and the complex suspension against the black, which looks absolutely perfect. I don't think you can get a better spec than this when it comes to the exterior. When it comes to the interior, I probably would have added a little bit of red, but that's just my opinion. Now let's move on to one of the cars that I was really pleased to see. It was this, the Ferrari F50. Out of the limited edition Ferraris, the 288 GTO, F40, F50, Enzo and LaFerrari, I seem to find that the F50 is one of the hardest ones to find. So when I saw this, I was really happy. The 288 GTO is actually rarer than this. They made 272 or 273 of those cars, and the F50 they made 349. But for whatever reason, it always seems to be harder to find one of these. Now I think it's fair to say that the F50 is overshadowed by the F40, although I prefer the look of the F50. The F50 was launched to celebrate 50 years of Ferrari, just like the F40, which was launched to celebrate 40 years of Ferrari. This car has a 1990 detuned Formula 1 engine, which is a naturally aspirated V12, unlike the Ferrari F40, which is a V8 twin turbocharged, developed for Group B racing in the 80s. This car can do 0 to 60 in 3.8 seconds and has a top speed of over 202 miles an hour, which is fast even by today's standards, and I think it's aged quite well considering the design is 20 years old, although the interior is starting to look a bit dated. The car does have a manual gearbox. Ferrari hadn't produced a Formula 1 style gearbox for its road cars at this point. Now we're looking at the F40, the last car to be signed off by Enzo himself. I was pretty lucky last year to sit in the F40 LM, one of the original 19 cars made. The F40 was the first production car to break the 200 mile an hour barrier, definitely one of the greatest cars ever made. Here we have a 360 Challenge Stradale, basically a racing car for the road. They made 852 of these and is very different from the standard 360. Now we're approaching one of my favourite Ferraris of all time, and probably one of the best looking Ferraris to have come out Maranello in the last 30 years. It's the 355 Spider. 355 marks a change in direction for Ferrari design, from the 80s wedge look to the cleaner lines of the 90s, and in Spider form, as we see here, it's definitely one of the best Ferraris made in recent times. Now we're going on to one of the stars of the show, the Ferrari 250 GTO. This car was launched in 1962 and was sold in the United States for $18,500. Today the car is worth an estimated 45 to 55 million, making it one of the most expensive cars in the world. Only 36 250 GTOs were built, 33 in the form that you're looking at now, and 3 in the 250 GTO 64 variation, which had a lower roofline and was wider at the rear end. I have seen the 250 GTO 64 and now I've seen the 250 GTO, the original form, and this one is definitely the better looking car. The lines are just right. It's definitely one of the prettiest Ferraris. In fact, the pictures don't do it justice. I think you have to see this car in real life to understand just how good looking this car is. This was not the only 250 GTO at the show. There is a blue one that we'll see later on. That one is currently for sale. Also, if you take a look at my Ferrari playlist, you'll find a video on an ex Graham Hill 250 GTO. So why is this car so valuable? Let's start with the engine, as with all Ferraris. It has a V12 3-litre engine producing 300 brake horsepower. This gave the car a top speed of 170 miles an hour, a 0 to 60 time of 5.4 seconds, and 0 to 100 time of 10.5 seconds. This was basically a racing car for the road. It didn't even have a speedometer, just an RPM gauge. The 250 GTO won the International Sports Car Championship 3 years in a row and won Le Mans in its class twice. And that's why it's so valuable. It's got the motorsport heritage as well as the performance. Now what we're looking at is probably the second most desirable Ferrari, the 250 GT California. This is a car that was designed primarily for Ferrari's biggest market, the United States. The car has the performance of a racing car, and it was raced privately by some of its buyers, but at the same time, as you can see, the car looks very elegant, especially in black. Black is my favourite colour for Ferraris. Now when the production for the 250 series of cars finished, it was followed by the 275 series of cars, and here we have a 275 GTB in black as well. It's interesting comparing the 275 against the 250. I think the 250 just has the edge in looks. And here's a fact that you may not know. Steve McQueen used to own one of these. He of course was a big time petrol head. So which do you prefer, the 250 GT California or the 275? Now the last car we're looking at in the Joe Macari collection is an early 1950s Ferrari, the 375. It's a racing car, and like all racing cars of this period, they were very basic. There was no safety features in this car, but they did look great. Just look at the dials on that car, I really like them. And almost the oversized steering wheel, I think it gives a lot of character to the car. And now from one of the oldest Ferraris at the show to the latest Ferrari, the LaFerrari Berta. This car was launched to celebrate the 70th anniversary of Ferrari. In terms of performance, the Aperta is pretty much the same as the coupe. Of course, there's going to be a little bit of extra drag because there's no roof on it, but overall it's not much of a difference. They're making 200 of these cars, so half the number of the coupe, and the price is almost twice as much as the coupe. Personally, I think taking the roof off the LaFerrari makes the car look even better. It kind of makes the car look even more aggressive. Here we have an interior shot of the Aperta. It's black with yellow stitching, it matches the exterior, and in the center here we have a plaque showing you that this is a 70th anniversary model. What we have here is a custom tuned Ferrari F12. I don't know what you think of the exterior, it's obviously to your own taste, but this car has been tuned to 800 brake horsepower. It has carbon bits all over, front and back, and in the interior. Now, I was very lucky to be allowed to sit in this car. It was my very first time that I sat in an F12, and I have to say that when I sat in it, the seats felt great. Not only did the seats feel good, but the driving position was really nice. I can understand why this is considered a really nice GT car. And this one has a lot of carbon fiber, as you can see, but the color, I probably would have chosen a different interior color. I think with all that carbon, black would have been great with red stitching. As I said before, black is my favorite color for Ferraris. Now this here is a 512 BB, and I was lucky enough to get a close-up look at the engine. One of the interesting things about the BB is, or the 512 BB, is that the radiators are not at the back, but they're at the front, right at the front of the car, with the pipes running through the cabin. So apparently on a hot day, the cabin becomes very hot. So when they launched Testa Rossa, one of the things that they did, which is the replacement for this car, one of the things that they did was that they made sure that the radiators were at the back of the car, and that's one of the reasons why the Testa Rossa is so wide at the back. Here we have a 308 GTB race car. This car is still awaiting restoration, but what's interesting about this car is that I got a chance to take a close-up look at the engine. Now this is a V8 engine mounted transversely, which is unusual for supercars, especially nowadays. What's interesting about this car is just look at how basic the car looks compared to modern day Ferraris and modern day cars in general. Unfortunately, this car needs to be restored, so hopefully somebody will pick it up and restore it and race it as it should. Here we have what I believe is a Ferrari 250 Testa Rossa. If I am wrong, please correct me in the comments below, but I believe this is a 250 Testa Rossa without its engine cover on. Now the 250 Testa Rossa engine was basically used in the 250 GTO, so it gives you an idea what the GTO engine was like. Also, the name Testa Rossa basically means redhead, referring to the red painted valve covers on the cylinder heads. And take a look at the interior. This car is clearly used because it's got modern day seat belts. You can also see the famous Ferrari gated gearbox and the oversized steering wheel with its simple dials, and you're about to see something really cool where the engine cover is being placed back on and tied down with leather straps, and you can also see the engine straight through the perplex glass. The car we're looking at next is a Ferrari 275 GTB Competizione. Ferrari originally made 3 of these cars. It was meant to be a successor to the 250 GTO, but they only made 3, and this one is not a real Competizione. It is a 275 GTB, but it's got a Competizione body on it. This car is actually owned by James Martin, a famous chef in the UK. Apparently, if one of the 3 Competiziones was to come on the market, it will be worth more than a 250 GTO. Some people have put the price at over 100 million US dollars, which I think is a ridiculous amount of money for a car. In fact, the car market itself has gone crazy in the last few years. I think car prices are overpriced. The car we're looking at here is a 599 60 F1. It celebrates 60 years of Ferrari's Formula 1 victories. This one has the Alonso livery, and the other one is a Frolian Gonzalez livery, which celebrated Ferrari's first victory in Formula 1 in 1951. The car here is a 250 GTO. This 250 GTO is actually for sale, although the price is not listed on the website. It was nice to see two Ferrari 250 GTOs at the same event. This brings my 70th anniversary celebration video to an end. I know it's been a long video, so I'd like to thank you for watching, and if you have any suggestions, please let me know. I'm always open to new ideas and ways to improve my channel, and see you next time. Thank you.